There's a significant shift happening right now in parts of the Christian world. Some influential voices are casting doubt on Christian support for Israel and even questioning the value of the Jewish-Christian relationship itself. Now, that's concerning because ideas shape relationships. And when the wrong ideas take root, real relationships suffer. Well, my guest today is Luke Moon, Executive Director of the Philos Project. So Luke and his team are doing important work as a Christian organization building stronger relationships with both Jews and Muslims. And as a Christian leader, Luke has been outspoken about some of these recent trends. So today we'll talk about what's happening in the Christian world regarding support for Israel and why it matters for Jews, for Christians, and for the future of their relationship. Hey, Luke, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Bridge Builders Forum. We're going to be discussing an extremely important and timely topic today regarding what many people consider to be eroding support for Israel and the Jewish people among Christians. I know you have been very outspoken about this topic as a Christian in defense of Christian Zionism and standing with the Jewish people. So we're going to jump into that shortly. But again, hey, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who don't know Luke Moon, he is the executive director of the Philos Project, which I'm excited about people learning more about the Philos Project if you don't already know about it. But it is an organization that is dedicated to equipping Christians to stand with Israel and the Jewish people. The Philos Project also supports persecuted Christians in the Middle East, and they seek to, as they put it, foster a revival of Western values rooted in the Hebraic origins of the Christian faith. So that's an awesome mission, extremely important. We're going to talk more about all of this. But in our conversation that we're going to jump into, we're not only going to discuss the Christian relationship to Israel and the Jewish people, but we're going to discuss and explore the broader and very important work that Luke and the Philos Project are undertaking beyond that. So, hey, you recently wrote an article that was a strong defense of Christian Zionism, and it was a rebuttal to Tucker Carlson's efforts, as you put it, to drive a wedge between Christians and Jews. So we're going to talk about your article in just a moment, but first, I want to just frame our conversation by just hearing a bit of your own story and the work you're involved with the Philos Project. So just share a little bit of your journey with us and how you landed in the work you're doing today.
Well, I was a missionary for 12 years with an organization called YWAM, or Youth with a Mission.
Yeah.
And while I was doing that work, I started actually fighting human trafficking. And while I was fighting human trafficking, I ended up getting my master's in political and economic development. And, actors go to Hollywood and policy wonks go to DC, because I wanted to kind of get beyond the awareness part. And so when everybody knows about human trafficking, what do? That was the kind of question that I was wrestling with.
Yeah.
Which led me to DC. Problem is, no one in DC wanted to hire me. So I ended up, because I'd been a missionary for 12 years, was self-funded. So I didn't have a lot of paychecks and things.
Sure.
It was just live by faith, man. And
right.
so I was found myself in an organization called the Institute on Religion and Democracy, which is at the intersection of faith and politics. And I remember in 2011, we had an event in the office, and I had a conversation with I believe the first Jewish person I had ever had a really long conversation with.
Wow.
Meaning I grew up in Seattle, so I'm sure there were Jews around me.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of Northern European peoples in Seattle. And so I don't know, Goldberg is a Jewish name and Stevenson is Scandinavian. Everybody's got these kind of long, names. And so I'm well, okay, then they're white, and they're European looking, right? So I had, and the conversation was really about, I never had a long conversation about how Jews think about Christians and how they think about what happens if a Jew becomes a Christian. And that was it was a really interesting conversation.
I bet.
And then what happened was I was tracking a group that we called the Christian Left. And I would go to the conferences that they would go to, and they would say some crazy stuff, and I would write articles about the crazy stuff they said. And I ended up going. I saw that these guys I was kind of tracking were all going to a conference in Bethlehem called Christ at the Checkpoint Conference.
Sure.
It was an anti-Israel conference, anti-Christian Zionist conference in Bethlehem. And I was like convinced my boss to send me there. And he was like, well, if you can raise the money, you can go.
Okay.
So I raised the money and I sent an email to everybody I know saying, I'm going to Israel and I want to meet your friends. Because I thought if I'm going to spend a week in like the Palestinian territories, I should spend a week in Israel proper.
Yeah.
And so I went the week before the conference started. And I just drove up and down the country meeting people. And I would have a meeting, a coffee or a lunch, and I'd ask them a bunch of questions. What do you think about everything? And how long your family been here? And about the conflict and like, et cetera, et cetera. And then I would say, well, who else should I meet? And they said, oh, you should really meet this person. And so I said, can you introduce me? And that would be my next meeting. So I just drove up and down the country meeting people. And then I did the same thing on the Palestinian side. And it was very different. And it was like, I remember sitting with a Palestinian peace activist, Christian one. And I said, what do you want? And he said, well, I want peace. Well, so is Miss America. Like that's not an answer. Everybody wants peace. Like, describe to me what peace would look like. And his picture of peace did not have any Jews in it. And so I'm like, well, that's not peace. Right. That's a cessation of violence because the people you hate aren't around anymore. It's and so to me, it became very clear that there was a lot of asymmetry in terms of how the Israelis and the Palestinians saw each other in this space and the conflict and all these things. And so I started writing and talking about what I was hearing, what I was seeing. I wrote an article about the fact that a lot of the major Christian institutions, what I would call some of the pillars of evangelicalism, were largely anti-Israel in their orientation. World Vision, Willow Creek Church, which was at the time one of the preeminent mega churches in the United States. Biblica had just put out a Bible that was just like so bad, dude. And it was just a bunch of these institutions, and Wheaton College was a problem. I found that it was like, man, there's something going on here. And so I started writing and talking about it. Then next thing you know, I get invited to come back to Israel again. And then I get invited to talk some more, write some more. And the next thing you know, I'm doing it full time. So that was 11 years ago, 2014. And I've been pounding away at this rock for now 11 years. And
that's amazing.
Here I am. When I started, I had no gray hair. So warning has been laid out.
Yeah, right. Well, those of you who are listening, who are just listening to the audio version of this, won't be able to appreciate Luke's humor here.
Joke,
but,
yes.
Well, hopefully you can appreciate it, even though you can't see it. But anyway, oh man, so wow, those first couple trips to Israel, man, you were not touring just like relaxing on a nice air conditioned bus. You were working, learning, growing, and it really shaped you and led you into the work that you're doing now. So just tell me real quick before we move on, how did you get connected with Philos Project? I'm very curious about how you kind of got to what you're doing now. And so we're going to talk about Philos Project, but I'd like to bridge that gap.
Right. So in 2014, in March, so the Christ at the Checkpoint Conference was every other year. So I went in 2012. In 2014 was the next time it happened. And I had been told to look out for this guy named Robert Nicholson. And he was told to look out for me. And we met each other in the hallway of the hotel where the event was. And we just hit it off. And because we both really like to talk to people you're not supposed to talk to. Like, I love to hey, you want to go grab a coffee? You want to go grab a beer?
Yeah.
Because you get some really interesting insights when you talk to somebody who you fundamentally disagree with or fundamentally disagrees with you. And so me and Robert were very we just love to go hang out with people and just have some really fun, feisty kind of conversations. You're not throwing punches, but you're just really wrestling with some major topics. And I love that. I still do. And so Robert was in the process of starting the Philos project. And he said, would you come and help me get this off the ground? And so he convinced me to move to New York. I was a reluctant person to do such a thing. But now I'm there, a New Yorker officially. Once you're there for 10 years, you know how to be angry when you drive. That's,
right.
That's the lesson you learn.
Right,
but,
right.
That was how. So it was really like me and Robert at the very beginning. There was 4 of us at the very beginning. And then it grew and now we're in a process of like a lot of stuff that we had done over the years. We kind of pared that down and are really kind of focusing on a couple of areas because it got a little bit bloated there for a while.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And we're going to, again, like I said, we're going to talk more about some of the things you guys do because you guys have really become a strong voice in this space. And I really respect it. So I just want to hear, I wanted to hear a little bit of your initial connection. So thanks for sharing that with us. But I want to pivot a little bit and, talk about a significant part of your work in our discussion today, which revolves around this idea of Christian Zionism. Mm-hmm. Given recent headlines, which a lot of people in the Bridge Builders Forum audience are very aware of and follow closely, I think a fair question to ask is, let's just even talk about this term, Christian Zionism, because I do think that there is some confusion around it, and not everybody means the same thing when they're using it. So before we even get into your article and the Tucker Carlson topic and so forth, briefly, how do you understand the term Christian Zionism? What does that mean to you and the Philos project?
So I'll start actually with the term Zionism. And Zionism, the way I see it, is the Jews living in the land that was promised to them by God as an everlasting covenant. The belief of that is a Zionist. Is to me that's it. And the fact that I'm a Christian means I'm a Christian Zionist, right? Because I'm a Christian that believes the Jews have a right to live in the land that was promised to them as an everlasting covenant.
Yeah.
And I think everlasting actually means everlasting. It doesn't mean everlasting doesn't mean until 70 AD. It means everlasting. It means until November of 2025.
Yeah. Right. I got you, man. Okay. No, that's all clear. We're going to press into that a little bit further. And so I want to actually, that's a good segue into what I want to go into now. And this very passionate piece that you wrote, that I've already alluded to, that was published in the Christian Post titled Tucker Carlson's New Crusade Against Christian Zionists. And so I came across this article. I'd already known about you. We've got mutual friends, but I read the article the day it was released, and literally the day it came out, several people were just texting me this article. You got to read this article. This is really, really great article. And it was a great article. So clearly as a Christian, as you expressed in this article, you are very concerned not only about Tucker Carlson, but also about just sort of some broader efforts and trends. And so what I want to do, Luke, is I want to read actually a few lines from your article and then just ask you to maybe explain and share a little bit more about kind of what your concerns are with this issue and this development. So here's what you wrote, just a couple lines here. You said, what's particularly worrying is that Tucker isn't doing this alone. He's part of a growing movement of right-wing figures who see the Christian-Jewish alliance as an obstacle to their political project. These people understand that Christians and Jews working together are the moral backbone of Western democracy. Break that alliance and you weaken the West itself. Okay, so that's the end of your quote. So I thought that was a very significant statement. There's a lot there, but I want to talk about this. First of all, what is this Christian-Jewish alliance, and why are there groups that want to break it?
Well, I think that, the Jewish-Christian alliance is just that, Christians and Jews who actually believe the Bible is true. Come together and understand that there's a lot of people out there that say Western civilization is derived from Rome and Athens. And I would say it's derived from a combination of Rome, Athens, and Jerusalem. But Jerusalem actually being the preeminent of those, because it's actually the Bible that shapes Western civilization more than any other book by far. I mean, the founders read the most quoted parts of the Bible, the most quoted book of the Bible by the founders of the United States is the book of Deuteronomy. Because the nation building parts of the Bible, contrary to what Tucker has said recently, the nation building parts of the Bible are found in the Hebrew part of the Bible, actually. What are the passages in the New Testament that talk about how to order a government? It's like Romans 13.
Yeah.
First Peter 2 talks about the role of the government is to punish evil and affirm what is good. You have Jesus saying, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, render unto God that which is God's, and talking about taxes. That's about it.
Yeah.
It is mostly about interpersonal relationships, like husbands and wives, slaves and free, like Jews and Gentiles, and then obviously relationship with God. And so what you find, if you're looking for nation building, you find that in Deuteronomy. You find that in the prophets that talk about, the role of justice in society, and the role that judges play. There's so much in the Hebrew part of the Bible.
Yeah.
About developing a nation and building a moral people.
Sure.
I saw Tucker speak at an event recently where he said, it's the New Testament that formed the United States of America, or formed Western civilization. And that is just totally not true. It's actually, I'll tell you, there's a great book by Os Guinness that talks about how it's actually the fact that the printing press and the Protestant Reformation, what did the Protestant Reformation do? It put the Bible, the whole of the Bible, into the hands of the people. So you have the Enlightenment, the kind of the Renaissance of things, but you also have the forming of nations, which only comes after the Protestant Reformation, because people are reading the Old Testament about how to form a nation. So there is this, the perception is that, we don't have to do anything with Jews. We don't have to do anything with Israel. Doesn't matter at all. Everything we're talking about, everything, about America comes out of the New Testament. I don't even know how you actually can think that.
Right.
Because my question to Tucker would be, what tools? How are you supposed to lead a nation? A nation, not a church, not a household, not a business, a nation.
Yeah.
And he would not find those answers in the New Testament. He wouldn't.
Right. Well said. If you're enjoying this conversation, I want you to know that the Bridge Builders Forum is more than just a podcast. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping Jews and Christians better understand their faith, the Bible, and each other. And your support helps us host these vital conversations and create educational resources and interactive learning experiences. And yes, all donations are tax deductible. To give, just visit bridgebuildersforum.com and click donate. Every gift makes a difference. So thank you for standing with us. And if we can serve you in any way, send us a message. I just I watched a video that you made, and you just alluded to something you said into it. I watched a video you made right around the same time you wrote the article that I just referenced. And in the video, you further expressed, some of your concerns about Tucker Carlson's viewpoints. And I think you were 100% serious when you challenged Tucker Carlson to actually have you on his show to have a discussion and a debate about these issues. And I think I'm one of many people who would love to see that happen. But seriously,
as am I. Ryan, I've actually asked him. He and Tucker and I text each other back and forth. actually.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I have asked him to have me on his show.
And what's his response?
And he's told me twice, I will not have you on my show. You're a bad representative of a Christian leader. And yeah. No,
interesting.
He is not a big fan of the Luke Moon Project. That's for sure.
Yeah. So he sees you as he sees you as a deviant Christian because of your support for Israel.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Actually, I'll be. I don't mean to be like, I'm the way that he frames when he talks about Christian Zionism and the stuff he lines up as his objections to it are directly aligned with the arguments that him and I have had back and forth.
Wow.
I feel like I'm in his brain when, like, who's he thinking about when he's raging against Christian Zionists? Probably Luke Moon.
He's thinking of Luke Moon.
Okay. I mean, that's maybe not just me, but it was right. I push at him, and he is, and because he's just wrong, and I really do wish he would have me on his show because, Ryan, there's a small number. So Tucker I just saw Tucker speak in an event, where he said that he had just read the Bible for the first time in the last couple of years, like all the way through Genesis to Revelation.
Okay.
And
wow.
But then he comes up with these interpretations, and he has on certain Christian figures that are very obscure and not easy to find unless, because the Christian bubbles. There's a Christian bubble; it's a big bubble, but there's a lot of bubbles within the bubbles. And if you're not in certain circles, I don't know how you would come across Munther Isaac, who's a Palestinian pastor from Bethlehem.
Right.
I don't know how you would come across the nun who also
had on his show. Yeah.
Had on his show. And he's also articulates, he's very much, he's of the mind of Christian Zionism and heresy. He's very antagonist towards the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. He is very he's very committed to call it Jesus was the peacemaker, Jesus is a pacifist orientation.
Okay.
There are not a huge number of people in the broader Christian community that will point you in that direction. It is actually a fairly, because it's not it's not a very common mainstream belief to be a Christian pacifist. It's not. It is aligned with certain denominational orientations, but it's not actually very common.
Right.
And he picks that up and is very aggressive with that is a correct interpretation. So somebody's providing him that understanding, that hermeneutic, and I think I know who it is, but I also have argued with that guy Tom too. So it's
yeah, I'm not surprised. No, so listen, you've just totally upped the ante, man. I love it. I didn't realize that you are actually dialoguing with him privately, and so that's it doesn't change my curiosity, but it does. I just didn't realize that was a factor in the equation. But let me just ask you, so what do you guys okay, let's just say, Luke, let's say you could be on his show.
Yeah.
All right. What are some of the things that you would want him and his audience to hear about your view as a Christian regarding, having a promoting positive relations with the Jewish people and support for Israel?
Well, I actually make the case for Israel and Christian support for Israel mostly out of the New Testament. So it's I actually start. Okay. I start with several passages in Matthew. So it's very interesting that Jesus says in Matthew in two places. One, when he's sending out the disciples 2 by 2, right, to go and preach.
Yeah.
And he says, "Do not go to the Gentile villages. I have come only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Okay. He didn't say he actually came for the whole world. He actually says, And he repeats that again with the Syrophoenician woman when he's up in what is currently Lebanon. And he's up there, and this woman comes to him and says, "My daughter is very sick." And Jesus says to her, "I have come only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." And then she makes the argument that, well, like the crumbs fall from the master's table, and and so because of her faith, Jesus is like, okay, fine,
right.
But what happened? Gentiles read themselves into the book of Matthew, but we're not there. We're not there. It's like it is the first Christian, the first Gentile to become a Christian is Cornelius. And read Peter's account. I mean, we're talking, this is probably 7 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. Like, you have Peter's, like, chapter 10 is the story of Cornelius, the sheep coming out of heaven, Cornelius' servants coming, like, and then Peter going, chapter 11 is Peter going to Cornelius and his followers. They get the Holy Spirit. They're like, and Peter the whole time is like bothered by it. He's a bit like Jonah, which is actually great, because when Jesus asked Peter in Caesarea Philippi, "Who do they say that I am?" And Peter says, "Well, some say you're Elijah, some say you're John the Baptist, but I say you're the Christ." Jesus says to him, "Simon Bar Jonah," which is Simon, son of Jonah, "on this rock I will build my church." So Jonah, it's so cool to me, because Jonah the story of Jonah is him to go preach the repentance to the Ninevites, right?
Right.
And they're swallowed by the whale, but he's really upset about it. He doesn't want them to repent, because he's like, they killed a bunch of Jews, so he's not a big fan of them.
Right.
And Peter has the same kind of orientation when Cornelius becomes a Christian. Like, read it. I'm telling you, like, read that passage, and you will see he's not a big fan of the fact that these Gentiles are coming in. And so if you read, like, for instance, in the book of opening chapter of Acts, in Acts chapter 2, where it's the list of nations, it says there were Jews, devout men from every nation under heaven. And it starts listing out a bunch of nations.
Right.
I always read that as Gentile nations. It's not. It's Jews living in those places who have come back to Jerusalem because of Passover, that are then that they speak the language of those places. So it's linguistic, not nationality.
Yeah, these are diaspora Jews.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if all along the way, like, I was a normal Christian, Gentile thinking, reading person for most of my life. Like, I don't think I met my first Jew until 2011, went to Israel the first time in 2012.
Wild.
But, like, I would say if you had asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, like, who's the nations represented in, like, are those Gentiles? I would have been, yeah, of course they're Gentiles. And it was only like, so actually I'll tell you what happened. It was like, I was working on a project with The Chosen, where I was going to bring the cast to Israel for the first time, because the cast had never been.
Sure.
And so I was working on a project, and I was going to teach the cast the history of Israel. Okay, the cast of The Chosen. And so I was preparing for all the teaching, and the point in which I was getting them was after it was between season 4 and I think it was between season 4 and 5. So they had acknowledged that Jesus was Messiah, but the death and resurrection had not yet happened. Okay. So they believe he's the Messiah, but don't know what's going to happen next. And so what I called, I'm trying to explain to these guys, you are year 30 Jews. Okay. You are, like, you think like Jews, you are Jewish, you don't engage with Gentiles much. And so that shifted my thinking, like, oh my gosh, actually, this is way more Jewish than Gentile. And then that triggered a whole bunch of study. And then I started seeing it more, and then I started seeing it more, and that and it built. And now I'm like, I can't unsee it, because once you do see it, you're like, and then you get these passages where, in Acts 21, where Paul is after he's written Galatians, after he's written Romans, and First and Second Corinthians, and like a bunch of the epistles, and done all this missionary work, he goes back to Jerusalem, right? Yeah. And he meets with James. And James says to him, there are some that are saying that you are teaching Jews to forsake Torah, to not follow the law and customs.
Right.
Okay. Therefore, go and take 4 men with you and go and offer sacrifices in the temple.
Yeah.
So you got to think, this is probably more than 25 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. Paul, the apostle, offers sacrifices in the temple.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. That's pretty Jewish Paul. Yeah.
That's a super Jewy Paul, man.
Yeah.
And if you think that, because we got to interpret scripture with scripture. I mean, that's like you read the book of Acts to understand the context upon which the disciples and the apostles entered, and the gospel's the same. And then the epistles are theological treatise in many ways on like their backstory situations when we've seen the narrative, right?
Sure.
So you have to understand scripture with scripture. And so at the very end of his ministry, if you think like that, Paul thinks that the temple is like sacrifices, that Jesus, he believes, because we know this elsewhere, Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. He affirms that position.
Sure.
And yet offers a sacrifice.
Yeah, he didn't see a conflict there between the temple and Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And which neither should we then, right? Because the physical manifestation of a deeper theological truth is a pattern that happens throughout Scripture.
Yeah.
Like, depending on your church tradition, you take communion maybe once a month, maybe once a week, maybe once a day. But communion is a symbolic, like a physical act,
right,
that represents a deeper truth.
Yeah.
A physical act that represents a deeper truth. So you can have Paul offering sacrifices in the temple, seeing that what the sacrifices represent, the transfer of the guilty onto the innocent, of this death onto life, onto something that's innocent. You can see that, and then ultimately see how powerful it is that Christ is the ultimate version of that. Those two things aren't separate. And so my frustration, and this is what I would spend all my time talking to Tucker about, would be just unpacking this whole pattern. Tucker, as far as I know, you're not Jewish. So how did you come into this? What does Paul say then to the Gentiles in Romans 11 about, we're grafted in to this story that God is unfolding and has been unfolding with the Jewish people from the time of Abraham. And Paul says to us, so even if at the end of all my hardcore Zionist cell, he says, Luke, still, I'm not with you. I disagree with you. It's wrong. Okay. Even if you 100% affirm replacement theology, fulfillment theology, covenantal theology, whatever theology that gets you to where God's plan for the Jews is kind of, it's on pause, let's say.
Yeah, at best. Yeah.
If that is your view, you are still not allowed to be arrogant about it and boastful about it, right?
Yeah.
Romans 11 talks about there is a partial hardening, but also Romans 11 says in verse 28 that and this is speaking about Jews, or Paul is speaking to Gentiles about Jews who are not coming to faith in Jesus. Okay, they don't believe Jesus Mashiach. He's saying to them, He's saying about them. He says, they are enemies of the gospel for your sake, you being Gentiles, but God's elect for the sake of their forefathers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I have this, I love to have this conversation with people because.
And beloved for the sake of the forefather. Loved, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Election is the mean. Like if you're a Reformed theologian, meaning if you're on like a Calvinist, if you're a Presbyterian, Reformed Baptist, in that tradition of Christendom, like you have to deal with the fact that Paul is saying that they are elect.
Yeah, the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable, Paul says.
Yes, but election is here's the rub. Election is the means of salvation according to other parts of Paul's writings.
Sure. Yeah.
So is Paul saying that these Jews are saved because of their forefathers? Put that in your pipe and smoke.
Yeah,
I like that to me.
Speaking my language,
Luke. I love. So I. And then he goes on and says, and the gifts and callings of God are irrevocable. And I love this, like this end of, basically 9, 10, 11 are all this where we hang out as Jew lovers. He goes, you can feel Paul's frustration with the complexity, like how I don't know how this is going to work out, man.
Yeah,
because and Paul says it. Oh, the depths and wisdom and wisdom of God! How unsearchable are His ways. Who has explained anything to Him?
Yeah,
from Him and through Him are all things. So when I'm arguing with somebody about the fact that they're saying that, I'm saying, well, what if the partial hardening is the part of the hardening? Because the partial hardening is them not seeing Jesus is Messiah. What if that, because in His providence, what if there were no Jews on earth who kept kosher and followed Torah? Because historically what has happened over and over again is a Jewish person becomes a follower of Jesus. Eventually they give up kosher and Torah. And then they kind of they cease to be noticeably Jewish.
They assimilate.
They assimilate and disappear. And that is that's one of the things that the Jews who are, who don't like the evangelism say against us.
Sure. Yeah, it's a fair criticism.
It's like you just the Jewishness goes away.
Right.
And so you have had for 2,000 years now Jews who have rejected Jesus as Messiah. They follow Torah. They do keep kosher. They pray. And I have great conversations with my rabbi friends, and I ask them, you think it's okay for me to call you an enemy for the sake of the gospel? Enemy of the gospel. And they're like, yeah, actually, because the gospel is Jesus Messiah. Right. And so so then the next step is, but they're elect for the sake of their forefathers. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? And Paul then ends with, listen, guys, I don't know how this works out. I'm not the one explaining, God's going to do what God's going to do. Yeah. And I'm totally cool with that. And but imagine if we would think if there was no kosher keeping Jews on the planet, we would think about that whole thing about Jews and that the way we think about Greek mythology, right? Once upon a time, a lot of people believed that Zeus, threw thunderbolts from, Olympus or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? We don't think it, we can't imagine that now.
Right.
But I'm riding around today with an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. Huh. And, we have great conversations the whole time. I mean, we had to stop off at the grocery store because there's no kosher deli anywhere within 50 miles, so he could eat something. And sure. I'm over here in the driver's seat with my McDonald's sausage and egg McMuffin, and he's next to me with his
Yeah.
lox and bagel and cream cheese that he's picked up at the grocery store because they had the OU symbol on it.
Right,
and we're
right.
down the road. But
Yeah,
here's
but that's
the thing, it's
beautiful. That's beautiful.
it is, but it's also like we who are Gentiles. This is one of the things that all this I would tell Tucker. So, but
yeah, that's the question we're still on, and you're answering it for sure. I think we're getting the insight into some of your texts here.
I know, but I would say like
Okay.
we who are Gentiles are not obligated to the things that the Jews are obligated to. We're actually not obligated to circumcision. We're not obligated to keep kosher. We're not obligated to Torah.
Yeah.
The bar that was given to us, who are Gentiles, by the New Testament authors was don't worship idols, don't drink blood, don't fornicate.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a pretty low bar. We can't even keep that. But nonetheless, like we are not we're not obligated to do those. And that was the rub at the time the New Testament was being written by Paul.
Right.
And so all that to say is, even if you believe, and would be my kind of closing to all those who don't believe in any kind of special role for the Jews anymore, even if you believe that, you are not allowed to be boastful about it. You are not allowed to be arrogant about it. And that is exactly the orientation that these guys who are pushing this stuff hard, they're so arrogant. They're so boastful. They're the opposite of what a Christian is supposed to be like towards the unbeliever of any kind. And we are judged by the fruit of the Spirit, not the fruit of the world. And if you think that you are going to be a good Christian but your fruit looks a lot like the fruit of the world, I'm sorry, but God's got issues with you.
Yeah.
And if the arrogance that comes with some of these guys is so disgusting, and it's intolerable to me. And theology aside, if you're going to affirm replacement theology, I think you're wrong. Okay, but nevertheless, you are not allowed to be a jerk about it.
Right. That's crystal clear. Yeah. So, I mean, okay, there were probably 25 different points where I wanted to drill in and talk more of what you just brought up in the last few minutes. There are just so many things, but what I hear you saying, which was, I mean, again, I just want you to know, I just have so much respect just for your heart and your passion and just, how you're invested in this. I mean, you are doing this day in and day out. You're fighting these battles. And I have a lot of appreciation for your stand and what you're doing. But what I hear you saying, okay, again, what would you tell Tucker if you had the opportunity? And I think you prefaced it really well when you said, look, for you as a Christian, your support for Israel, yes, there's plenty of reasons in the Hebrew scriptures, Old Testament, to do that, but you're basing it largely on the New Testament, because that's really all you've talked about here, in the last few minutes is, hey, as whether it's Paul or the Gospels or the book of Acts, there's a lot there that informs why you're passionate about standing with Israel, supporting the Jewish people as you are. And I think that is really, really significant. And I just, I think you put that really clearly.
Well, people assume oftentimes that the reason I support Israel is because of some end times plan.
Yeah.
I really, back when I was a missionary, I did a lot of evangelism. I did street evangelism. I led a lot of people to the Lord. I hated talking about two things more than anything else. One was the first 11 chapters of Genesis. And the last was basically the whole book of Revelation, because it causes so much heat, but not a lot of light. I mean, we go rounds on that stuff. And I'm like, guys, I don't know how it was made. And I got some, it's something like that. And I think this is how it ends somehow. But there's this guy in the middle who I really like, and his name is Jesus, and I want us to talk about that guy. And
Gotcha.
so I find like I do think it's important to have a good teleology to think about how things
Sure.
come about, but I just don't find it there's so much like before then
Yeah.
that gets me further along in the conversation than any of that. Here's one thing that's very interesting to me, Ryan, is that a
Sure.
lot of the guys that I'm fighting the most aggressively all grew up in homes that were where mom or dad or maybe both were strongly dispensational or pro-Israel,
Okay. Huh.
and so there's a lot of reaction to their upbringing.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah. Okay.
can name them all actually.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think what we're talking about here is that it's very common, and maybe this is part of the root problem with this mindset is this radical disjunction between the Old Testament and the New Testament. To put it in Christian terms, that you're saying that radical disjunction, needs to be challenged, and there is, and of course you've just given a lot of examples as to why you feel that way. Man, I want to press into so many of these things further, but I want to pivot because I want to talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing with the Philos project, some other things that are very related. But again, just appreciate what you're doing in these battles you're fighting. But let's talk a little bit about. Man, I was just fascinated to learn that the Philos project has a partnership with Yeshiva University. So Yeshiva University, for folks who don't know, is a modern Orthodox university in New York, close to where you guys are headquartered there with the Philos project. But you partnered with them, and I want to hear a little bit about this, to pilot a Hebraic studies program for Christian students at Yeshiva University. So that's remarkable. It's remarkable. Yeah. It's unprecedented in many ways. And so tell us about how that came about and how the Philos project is involved in that partnership, because to me, it's a beautiful thing.
Right. So basically, one of the things that we found is oftentimes is there's very few kind of Jewish studies programs that are held by people who actually believe the Bible is true. Like you can go to Binghamton University, which is a state secular school here in New York. They have you can get a Jewish studies degree, but it's not going to be from an orientation that actually believes it's true.
Yeah.
Right. Or you can go to a seminary and do a Jewish studies program, but it's only going to be for the purpose of evangelizing Jews.
Yep.
Okay. So if you're just in a position where you want to have just a deeper understanding of the relationship between Christians and Jews, that is just like Philos means friend. And that's the orientation that we give to the work that we do.
Yeah, I love that.
Let's just be friends. Like there is a lot that we disagree about.
Sure.
And Jesus being the biggest one. But it doesn't mean that like I learned so much. The way, I describe it to people, I was a missionary for a long time. I was a pastor for a while. I would read the Bible and it's like looking at a can or something like that. And you see this can the same direction your whole life. And every time you see it, you look at it, you're like, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And then you meet a Jewish person, a rabbi or somebody who actually believes the Bible. And then they orient it slightly and say, well, this is how I see it. And it's a slight shift. Yeah. And you're like, I totally didn't see that.
That's different. Can looks a little different from that angle.
It's just very helpful. It's very cool. And so it was a way to provide that for Christians to be able to better understand the relationship between Jews and Christians in a place where where both of us believe what we're reading is true.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of addresses like that. Now it's and so we paid for it was like divided by a third. So students had to pay a third. we paid a third and yeshiva paid a third. So it was scholarships too.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that program is ongoing, but it's like cohort kind of driven.
Yeah.
It was, we didn't have as many students as I wanted us to have. And so we kind of struggled a bit on that. But nonetheless, I think it's a really good program.
It is really cool. It represents, the times that we're in. I mean, 30 years ago, even, there were some things that were happening to help mend the Jewish-Christian relationship, but that represents something so tangible and visible. And even if it didn't get widespread, massive, attention or numbers, it still represents a step forward. And so I just think that's a really cool, significant initiative that you guys were involved in. And I thanks for sharing a little bit about that.
Of course.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I want to also highlight before we kind of wrap this up, that Philos Project, which to me, this is a very important part of the context of what you guys do. You guys are committed to not only better Christian and Jewish relationships, but also to Christian Muslim relationships. So, you state on your website that you're trying to build lasting friendships with those Muslims who share a commitment to pluralism and endorse the right of Jews and Christians to live as equals in the modern Middle East. So, man, I would love to hear, and I think our audience would probably love to hear just a little bit, again, about how you, as a Christian organization, how do you foster these positive relationships with Muslims? What does that look like?
Well, there's a lot of Muslims out there that they're equally bothered by kind of the jihadi orientation, right? And one of the things that I found that people, when we talk about Islam and Muslims, we often talk about like there's the moderate Muslim. We talk about like there's extremists and then moderates.
Sure.
And the extremists, we would say, are like, those are the violent ones. And the moderate ones, those are the good ones. But Ryan, if somebody called me a moderate Christian, I would be offended. I am not a moderate Christian. I'm a zealous, very extreme Christian. I gave my life for the gospel. I got run out of many towns preaching the gospel. I did crazy stuff for the sake of the gospel.
I believe it.
But it was, so I'm a pretty extreme guy.
Okay.
And to be called a moderate would be insulting to me. I'm not a moderate. I'm very hardcore. And I find that where the divide actually needs to be, it's not between extreme and moderate, but between violent and nonviolent.
That's a huge distinction.
Yes.
Huge distinction.
Because you can be a very passionate Muslim, and I've met a ton of them who love doing the Muslim stuff.
Yeah. But
they hate the violence as much as I do. And so I'm like, okay, well, there's room there. We can I can work with that,
Yeah.
And
I hear you.
And so to me, like that's where I like to draw the line. I think the challenge, is, in this day, what we're seeing kind of happen in Europe, particularly in a lot of, at the European cities where you're having, the rape gangs and the massive protests against Israel, a lot of the anti-Semitism, and a lot of it comes out of the rise in Muslim immigration. I think it makes this work really difficult, actually, because I'm a conservative guy who wants, I want France to be French, and I want the UK to be English, and like Scottish and Welsh and whatever. But like you have this kind of there, and I'm bothered by the call to prayer in the coming out of the mosques in Minneapolis. Like that stuff bothers me, but it doesn't mean that I can't seek out how do we live together nonetheless.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair.
I think one of the things, Ryan, that I think it's become clear over the last couple of weeks is I've been having this discussion everywhere I can, because I think it's kind of at the core of some of the things we're wrestling with society, is like, how can you be, or how can you be friends with a person who vehemently disagrees with you on many things? Okay.
All right, Luke. I mean, that's huge right now. So
Right?
so what's your answer to that? Like, and that kind of even pivots into something I want to kind of where I wanted to land the plane, because you guys talk about, as Christians, one of your values with Philos Project is being principled and practical engagement, right? That's your inner language. So what does that look like in this just volatile world we live in, polarized, all these words we use?
I will set this up. So, the issue right now taking place particularly on the conservative side in America is you have a situation where the president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, called Tucker Carlson his friend.
Mm-hmm. Right.
After Tucker Carlson had platformed on his show Nick Fuentes. Okay. So people are saying, Kevin, you cannot be friends with Tucker because Tucker platformed an anti-Semite, and Tucker is playing with anti-Semites, and it doesn't give them hard questions. And he's like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Right.
And so that to me is actually a real, the fact that there aren't a ton of us out here who are saying, hey, you can be friends with somebody who disagrees with you. So as a Christian, we are supposed to, iron sharpens iron, brother sharpens brother. Like, we're supposed to call each other out when we cross over into sin. Okay.
Sure.
Like, if you were sinning, if we were like pals and friends, we lived in the same area and we hung out on a regular basis, we're kind of in the same space, and I saw you do something sinful, and I didn't call you out on it, that would be an act. I would be unloving to you.
Sure.
Right. Because loving is also preventing you from sinning more. Right.
Yeah,
to say, listen, dude, I'm seeing this pattern. You got to stop. Okay. And now, if let's say that, there was a continuation of sin, and like there would be, we're told by Paul, after a certain point, you got to call it what it is. It's unrepentant, and you got to not be friends. Don't even eat with that person for a season. And then we're not told how long that season is, but then we're supposed to treat them as an unbeliever. And how do you treat an unbeliever? You love them into the kingdom. Okay, so there is this, I think actually as Christians, we actually have a process for this. Now, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, Ryan, and I said, it was a couple of Jews who I was talking to. And I said, about this issue, how can you be friends with somebody who disagrees with you? And I said, listen, all the Jews in this room, I am good friends with. We disagree about the thing about Jesus, who I love more than anything else in this entire world. That is a fundamentally close thing to me, and it's a massive disagreement. Right. And yet here we are as friends. And I was talking to people I had been friends with for like 10 years who in this context, right? So we are already in a big disagreement. Yeah. And so then let's take it to another level. Let's say you and I, we already disagree about Jesus. Let's say we disagree about abortion. Let's say we disagree about gay marriage. Sure. Let's say we disagree about tax policy, immigration. At some, where's the line?
Right.
And so to me, a lot of this comes from an environment where we have lost the ability, because we have Facebook friends, which is not really friends. It's just they're like the things you would say on Facebook, maybe you would never say to actually a room full of people who are also there, right? Right. People the understanding of what it means to be a friend and confrontation, but a relationship. I have some really good friends who I really love, and I fundamentally disagree with them on so much stuff. And I'm committed to those friendships because
Sure.
I want them to change.
Yeah.
And I want them to change out of being in relationship with me. I mean, isn't that the process of sanctification? Weren't we once at enmity with God? And we are sanctified. We are being sanctified. We're in this process of becoming more like Christ. And how are we being more like Christ? By being in relationship with Christ.
Mm.
And so, like, the problem is if Kevin is being pulled along the string that Tucker is going on, that's a problem, Yeah. But if Kevin is, through his relationship, is able to pull Tucker in a more healthy direction, that would be a good thing. And
Right.
so I actually think, and this is, we got a very spirited conversation after this.
Yeah. Right.
I actually don't have a problem with Kevin being friends with Tucker Carlson.
Huh.
Because I think, like, the potential for transformation happens in relationship.
Sure.
Now, I think, and in his last statement that Kevin made, he said, "I'm committed to confronting Tucker when he is wrong." Okay? That's what I want for everybody. That's what I want for me and my relationships.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
I don't know, maybe call me a big squish, but I just think we have lost the ability to have real robust conversations. Feel like we just you can't be friends with that person. Well, why not? Like, how am I going to change them?
Right. Right.
By being only on the internet? Never.
Right. And also, by being friends with them, you're going to learn things about their perspective and why they are thinking the way that they're thinking. And, we learn so much from people who just see things differently and are persuaded differently. And, that's why, one of the reasons I'm just such a huge fan of Paul is because I think that he gave room and that he wanted people who were persuaded differently to show each other mercy. Back to Romans 11, which I think is kind of the, really a huge theme in that section of the letter. But I appreciate what you're saying. And I mean, it's clear, look, if for folks who are listening to this interview, they can tell you're a passionate guy. I mean, you're not messing around. You're all in, you're passionate. You have your convictions and viewpoints. But what I hear you saying is that, hey, we can still, there's a big distinction between passion and zeal and violence. And you made you articulated that really clearly. And I think that's a very important message for today.
Well, listen, I think we are, I think Jesus tells me, because everyone is made in the image of God, and therefore is their inherent worth, it comes from that. And I'm obligated by the Old and New Testament alike to love every single person. I'm not allowed to do anything else.
Sure.
And therefore, but people loving someone doesn't mean I agree with everything they do say and their actions and their words and all and so we got to learn to love people as people.
Yeah.
But confront the ideas, the bad behavior. And I think that's very Christian. It's a very Christian orientation. That's what I'm trying to pull people along, pull this movement along, saying, listen, guys, you are not allowed, if you're calling yourself a Christian, you can't hate the Jews.
Yeah.
You can call out Jews as individuals. You can call out, I don't like progressive Jews, or I don't like the Hare. We could name groups, sure. But the Jews, no, you're not allowed. I'm sorry, you're just not. The New Testament tells us otherwise.
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because those stereotypes and tropes and characterizations just never lead to a good place, and for so many reasons. And so I appreciate your stand, your clarity, Luke. We're going to go ahead and land it. I think we've got it in a good place to land there for today. But man, I just want to express my appreciation for you, your passion, your stand with and for the Jewish people and Israel, and really this message of the importance of friendship, Philos. So keep up the great work. I just want to wish you and your team at the Philos Project much hatzlacha, much success for 2026. Also, just for folks that want to learn more about the Philos Project and what you guys are about and what you're doing and how to support your work, how should they do that?
Yeah, I would philosproject.org is our website. And then I'm over on X. I'm Luke Moon 1. So
okay. Got it. Hey, Luke, thanks so much for being with us today. Really appreciate you and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Hey, I would love to connect with you further, so feel free to leave a comment or send me a private message. And the best way for us to stay in touch is to sign up for the Bridge Builders Forum email at bridgebuildersforum.com. This will keep you informed of cutting-edge resources and opportunities for us to connect and learn together. Additionally, the Bridge Builders Forum is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and your support helps us create content that overcomes misunderstandings and advances ideas that build bridges between Jews and Christians. So we'll be back soon to discuss more ideas that help Jews and Christians better understand their faith, the Bible, and each other.